Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on our Necromancer. This model is from Warhammer Quest, so it's actually an old model and I'm really looking forward to painting him up. So he's obviously been primed white already, and all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get a shot of primer on the base and we'll get painting him. Alright, now he's all primed up and I'm really looking forward to painting this guy. My plan for this color scheme here is going to be kind of bright, purpley, royally kind of colors. So I'm going to start with the NAGGAROTH Knight and the XEREUS Purple as a highlight on the main cloak. And then just to keep everything in the same tonal range, I'm going to go with the XEREUS Purple and then the GENESTEALER Purple as a highlight for that on the cape. The inside of the cape is going to be this nice kind of crimson red. So very much trying to stand out from the muddy look of the unwashed zombies and skeletons and all of that. And I want this very bookish guy to be all dressed up in these royal colors. A little bit of gold here and there, and of course the nice kind of bone color of the skull, the gems everywhere, lots of jewelry. He's even got these earrings in here. And then just a nice basic sword with kind of gold trim and obviously the silver for the regular part of the sword. Now I've got them all built up on this cork, so that's all going to be a nice kind of rocky base that he's standing up, overlooking the battlefield as he calls up all these zombies and skeletons and you name it. So I'm going to start right off with the NAGGAROTH Knight, and I'm going to start with the deepest part of the robe there first. So let's give the paint a good shake here. Get my brush a little wet. And thin down the NAGGAROTH Knight just a shade here. And I'm going to start with the basics of his cloak. Now, the cape comes over the shoulder, so with the cloak, I'm just going to start the inside of that first. Okay, now that we've got the robe done with the NAGGAROTH Knight, it looks pretty sharp. It's a nice, bold, rich purple, which is fantastic. Now what I'm going to do is take XEREUS Purple, this guy here, and I'm going to do the back of the cape. Now, the inside of the cape is going to be KHORNE red, or like a deep rich red, but for the outside I'll be doing XEREUS Purple. It's going to be nice and characterful when this is all done. It'll be really cool to see. Let's thin this out a little bit here. So it's a nice bright purple going on here, and I'll do 2 thin coats of this one. Make sure I get that color built up really nicely before I wash it. Okay, now so we've got the cloak all done here, his cape. It's in this beautiful purple color. And next up, what we're going to do is use a little bit of KHORNE red, and we're going to coat just on the inside of the cape. So I've got a little bit pulled aside here. Just had to thin it down a bit. My KHORNE red's getting a bit thick. So I'm going to finish off the inside of the cape with KHORNE red. And again, going to do a couple coats here just because I've got to thin down quite a bit. Okay, now we've got the red all set up nice and tidy in here, looking really kind of velvety and plush. Looks very comfy. Now I'm going to work on all kind of the leather components. So I'm going to do the hilt of the sword, I'm going to do his little pouchy pouch there, his little man purse, and I'm going to do his boots as well, and his little leathery cap. So anything that's going to be leather, I'm going to be doing in Steel Legion drab. So I'll give that a good shake. And here we go. So I'll start again with this pouch. Just kind of get that. That's nice and quick. Now, obviously, if I mess up, I can always touch up with the other colors after I do the wash, because I'm going to be coming back in again. But I get all the bases down. Try not to get too much here and there. And of course, as you work your way through, you really figure out where you've missed your areas. A little bit more paint here. And I'll do the hilt of his sword. Make sure not to get too much on his fingers here. And then I'll do his shoes and his hat. Okay, next up I'm going to be doing the skin tone, anything, his arms, his face, his hands, everything with RAKARTH flesh. Now obviously dude's sitting in a little tower reading his books all the time, so I'm going to make sure that he's got a nice kind of pallid complexion to him. So I'll just do all of the flesh tones, the hands, the face, the ears, everything with this thin coat of this RAKARTH flesh. Now he's got a bit of a beard on him, so I'm going to make sure I don't get that too badly. Okay, so now we've got his skin tone all based up. Looking pretty good. Got to make sure you get into the neck and all that other stuff in there. The next one I'm going to do is the skull that he's holding, and I'm going to do that with Screaming Skull, which is a pretty straight up app. Just going to apply it to straight up application. I'm just going to put it on our skull. Now that the skull's all covered up here with our Screaming Skull, go figure, what we're going to do now is we're going to work on the two metal pieces of the Necromancer. We've got his belt here and we've got his sword. I'm going to do those up in Lead Belcher. Give my paint some shakes. The rest of the metallics I opted to do the gold, just because I figured he'd be pretty ornate, just him and his own personal army, and I figured it'd be pretty simple. He'd only have a few pieces be metallic, unlike some of the other guys that'll be working for him, which will be mostly all they'll have is the metal sword that they have. But I figured he'd be pretty ornate, so I'm going to make sure I get as much trim as I can in gold. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to finish off all of the jewelry with Retributor armor. So his sword hilt, the little bald end of his sword, all of his jewelry, his earrings, his wristband here, and his, I guess it's called a bracelet, not a wristband. Just got back from a concert, so I figured it would stuck in my head. And the little gem on the head of the skull here as well. All right. So again, anything that's just a little bit ornate, I'm going to do with a thin coat of Retributor armor. And I picture him running around with these gold chains and all this jewelry, kind of running up and down the halls of his tower, his castle, his whatever. Kind of a very solitary lifestyle. Any riches that he came upon, he would definitely put upon himself. I think it'd be simple, but I do kind of picture him, the few items that he does take, he'd really dress up with. Alright, I'll keep going with this. I'll be right back for the wash stage. Okay, so he's looking really good. I'm really happy with the way he turned out. Now I just finished off the base to kind of go with the rest of my army to be. Made sure I tidied up a few of the little details there. Made sure I had a nice kind of decent layer of coloring over everything. And again, after the wash, I can pick that up as well. Really happy with the way he turned out. Left a little bit of white for the gray beard. I also left the gem there just because I'm going to go in and touch that up after. So not really a big deal. I'm going to hit it with a base paint after. And now it's time to wash. So here's my little bottle of wash. It's pretty gross, but it's a custom wash that I've put together. It's 25% AGRAX EARTHSHADE, 25% NULN oil, and 50% floor wax. And it works out really, really well. So I'm going to get a decent amount on my wash brush here, and I'm just going to give him a quick wash. Now this is kind of the best part of the whole process, obviously, because it brings out all of the detail in our buddy here. So I'll continue on with this. I'll leave it about an hour or so to dry. I know the other washes, they tend to dry fairly quickly, but this one I'm going to leave for about an hour. Okay, the wash is all done and it's all settled in nice. Lots and lots of detail. Looking good. So now I'm going to start basically the fastest part of this whole process. Now, base coating tends to take a little bit more time than you'd like. However, what I'm going to be doing now is just going over all of the major highlights now with some of the base colors, just to get that 3 layers of depth. So you have the regular color washed down, then you have the color back up, and then you have the edge highlighting. So just very quickly, I'm going to go over the robes again here with NAGGAROTH Knight. And super simple. So again, I'm just picking out the major highlights. So essentially I'm just overbrushing the spots that are in there, and it's not really too bad. There's a couple spots in there where I got a little bit extra gold, so it's going to tidy up in there, and I'm going to just do the major highlights here. Now that that major highlight's done, I'm going to be going over again the major highlights with the XEREUS purple, and I'm going to just do kind of the majors in here, but more of an edge highlight. So just kind of lightly overbrushing over top. I'll do an edge highlight, and I'll be doing the major highlights of the XEREUS purple on the cape as well. Now the big advantage to doing it this way, when you got that similar scope of colors, is that you can tear through things pretty quickly. So with the cape itself, again, just like I did with the other, I'm just going to go over the majors here, major highlights, and all I'm doing now is I'm just providing that extra layer of color depth between the recessed areas, which are all shaded now, and the rest of the cape, and it goes pretty quickly. I'll do some on the shoulders as well. And then in addition to that, I'll do an edge highlight to the robe. And it's just a simple edge highlight just to give a little bit of punch to the robe. Okay, so we've got those major highlights done. I've got the overbrushing done on the cape, and now that of course will form the edge highlighting of the robe. I'm now going to go in and do the edge highlighting of the cape now with GENESTEALER purple, again staying in that same tonal range. So this is super quick. And I'll just tidy this guy up here like this. Now just very gently on the upper edges or the ridges of the fabric here, and just doing that little bit of an edge highlight just to give a little bit more life to this cape here. Alright, so very similar. Once I've got this done all here, you can see the nice color variations in here. There's a little bit of shine, but that'll come off with the varnish. And now I'm going to move on to the exact same process, only I'm going to paint over with KHORNE red. Now I've got some thinned out on the palette off the screen here, and just going to go over the major highlights again, just to make it less, it's kind of blobby and more flowy fabric-y. If you mess up, like I did right there, just go back over top of it again. Just use a wet brush and try to pull that away a little bit. I'll just top that up with the NAGGAROTH Knight in a second here. And then back to it here, just doing the majors off of the cape. Alright, now that the cape's all done, we've got the majors back in there. I'm just going to use a little bit of WAZDAKA red, thinned out on the side here. And I'm just going to do the major highlights, or sorry, the edge highlights. Just bring out that beautiful red color. Next up on our list of things to do here, we're going to highlight the flesh with KISLEV flesh, and just going to pick out again all the kind of the major highlights, leaving any of the recesses a bit thick there, leaving any of the recesses that we've shaded over top of the flesh tone. Now that we've got his pale complexion all looked after, what we're going to do next is just touch up all the leather pieces. So his cap, his little man purse over here, and his boots. So I'm going to use Steel Legion Drab for that. Give it a good shake. And yeah, I'm really liking the way the skin turned out. I like the fact that it doesn't look like he gets a whole lot of sunlight. So I'll just go back over again all the leather pieces, just making sure that of course I don't get onto any of my other painted pieces. But I also want to make sure that I leave the recesses from the shading. Leave all as much of those intact as I can. Now finally, what we'll do with the leather, just to finish it off, is we'll do a final highlight of KARAK stone. Just make sure I have a nice thin little bit of that on my palette here. And I'll just do an edge highlight of KARAK stone on our leather. With the leather all done, we'll now move on to the skull. I'm going to now do all the major highlights on the skull with Screaming Skull, ironically enough. And again, with this one, we're going to leave as much of the recess as we can. And we're just going to go over the majors of the skull itself. So the jaw, pieces in the head, but wherever it's kind of shaded in, we're going to leave most of that intact. Alright, skull's looking pretty solid. Again, I love just leaving a little bit of that depth in there with the skull, which is great. And now I'm going to tidy up the gold with Fulgurite copper. Just a very subtle edge highlight, or just kind of touching on all the major high points. I love this color. It's nice and it's bright, and it's better than a lot of the highlighting with the RUNEFANG steels and the mithril silvers. So again, this is just a super light going over the top, just to give it a little bit of punch. And with the gold finished and highlighted, I'm now going to highlight the sword. In this case, I'm going to be using RUNEFANG steel, and I'm just again going to do a very subtle edge highlight all around the sword. Okay, now the last piece after the sword is all done. The metallics are all done. He's looking really sharp. Now, just to finalize this, I'm just going to do a little gem here on the skull. Now, I like to match the color of the magic to what I feel the magic of the wizard would be. So in this case, I like the death magic's going to be kind of murky and green and all that. So I'm going to go with the base of CALIBAN green, and then do the highlight of the gemstone with warpstone glow. So with the CALIBAN green here, just give it a shake. I'm just going to run the base color over top of the gem. That's why I didn't pre-do it before, because it's going to be a base. It's going to be a base color. Make sure I can get this in the shot here. And I'm just going to go around and make sure I get the CALIBAN green in. And then once this is done, I'm then going to do the gem highlight with warpstone glow. And again, with the gems, it's the opposite. So instead of going up and to the right, like you normally would, you do it kind of down and to the left. So let's make sure I got a nice thin bit of paint on my palette here. And then I'm just going to do the bottom half. Kind of the bottom left quarter. Just give it a little bit of visual highlight. And then I'm going to finalize that, or finish it off, with a speck of white. Shake, shake, shake the paint, with a speck of white up at the top. And there we go. Now I'm going to finish up my base here just so it matches the rest of my army, and I'll be right back. I'm going to clear coat it and he should be good to go. Alright, he's been clear coated with Purity Seal and he looks awesome. So really happy with the way he turned out. Lots of vibrant color, because the rest of the army is going to be a little bit muted, but I'm going to try and go with some bright colors to go in there as well. Really, really digging it. Love the skull, love the the sword, everything just worked out just awesome. So I guess the only thing left now is to get him all rigged up with a bunch of zombies to raise and a bunch of skeletons to raise. And I am looking forward to seeing how the army turns out. So that is it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, as it really helps get the video out there and it really helps the channel out. If you're interested in more videos like this, please subscribe to get notifications of future videos. And thanks again for watching. I hope you found it awesome and useful and fun, and we'll see you in the next one.